Shalom, everybody. Welcome to Universal Truth of Mankind. I'm Dave, your host. Recently, I've been asked about the divine image. I've been asked, what does it mean when God said, this is in chapter 1, verse 26 of Genesis, what does it mean? And God said, let us make man in our image. It's a lot about that part of the verse. It speaks volumes. But what does it mean? By understanding what is being spoken of, it's going to give us a better understanding of our relationship with each other, with the Creator, our role, our purpose, our mission in life, and it's going to give us meaning. There are two verses I'm going to be referring to here, Genesis 1:1 and 26a. Now, 26a I already spoken about, where it says, and God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness. The first verse is key to understanding what's taking place. It's going to put the verses in between in a better context of understanding. We all know the first verse by rote. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, usually when we hear this verse, there's a couple of ways our mind goes. First of all, we say, okay, in the beginning, God created the heavens, and we look up and we see the heavens, we see the stars, we see the planets, we see the constellations. Is that what's being spoken of? That's what we got to know. And we also say, and created the earth. So we think of what we're standing on. We think of this ball called terra firma, called Earth. That's the third planet or the third rock from the sun type of an idea. Is this what it's speaking of? Well, on the English side, that's very easy. That's a very easy conclusion to come to. But that's not what's being spoken here, and we'll see very shortly in the Hebrew why that is the case. So a lot of times this is considered like a summary verse of what takes place in verse 2 and on. But it's not. It's actually describing a spiritual event. There we go. Here you can see the same verse 1 particularly, but we see the Hebrew underneath. Now remember, Hebrew goes right to left. English goes left to right. So if we take a look to right, it says Bereshit. That's typically translated as in the beginning. And then it says bara, which also means create. And then Elohim, and then et, Hashemayim, va'et, haaretz. Now there's a lot going on in this verse. Like I said, in the beginning it says, or the first part on the right, it says in the beginning. And then it says create. Now the word create here doesn't necessarily mean create the way we think of creating. It's technically right, but like every Hebrew sentence that's within our Bibles has multiple understandings. They're all correct, but to get the full picture, you need to understand all the different ways a verse can be translated in order to better understand what's being stated. Now, there's two words I want to focus on here real quick before we move on, and that is Hashemayim. Now, Hashemayim, that would be, for example, that would be your first, that's your fifth word from the right. Can mean heavens or waters. Keep that in mind. So it's a plural word for heavens or for waters. Then the last word, haaretz, really means land. It doesn't necessarily mean earth. So land can be what? Mercury has land. Venus has land. Mars has land. Recently, there are planets being found in other solar systems that have land. So are we actually talking about land here? Actually not. If you take a look at the beginning of these words, in other words, we take a look at the fourth word, et, and the sixth word, ba'et, we notice that there's an aleph and a tav. And this is a clue showing us that we're pointing to something more spiritual. Okay, students of Kabbalah and Kabbalists would take the first word and divide it in two. Why? Because it's a compound word. And as a result, it really is two words in one. We had them in English as well. But if a person wants to get a better understanding of what Bereshit means, then you split it up into its individual components. In this case, the two words. We have bara and sheet. Now watch what happens when we transliterate this sentence according to normal methods. It says from right to left, I have slash marks to show the separation between the English words that represents the Hebrew word from right to left. First word, create. Second word, six. Yeah, you heard me. Number six. Create, Elohim. The Aleph Tav is also often translated as the. Then the heavens. Now you may say, why is it the heavens? Well, whenever there's a hey in front of a word, it represents the. So the is actually being represented twice here. So for translation, a literal translation, I want to make sure that we account for all the words. And the earth. So let's go back to the very beginning. So in the beginning, we have create six. Now, what does it mean to create six? Well, in the very beginning, like any project we begin, we have a thought. We have an idea. And we say, oh, I have an idea for. Well, you could say that here. In the beginning, a thought created six, or a thought of six occurred. Six what? Well, it doesn't say here. It doesn't say what the six are yet. But there was a thought of creation. The very beginning of anything that's created starts with a thought. Then a create was again. Well, what are we creating now? Well, you can think of whenever you have a thought of something, then you have to design it. So this create is like the design of the six. And then Elohim is mentioned. Now, what is Elohim? Elohim is typically translated as God. It's not the only word that's translated as God, but it's typically translated as God. We'll get back to these words a little more to get a little further detail out of them as we develop this subject and better understand the divine image that we are created in, the likeness that we are part of. So you had the thought of something, then you had the design of something, and then you had the fabrication, something to bring it into creation, bring it into existence. Elohim brings it into existence. Now, then we have the, capital T, capital H, capital E. But let's see, what does this word really mean, Aleph Tav? Well, it's a composition or shorthand of all 22 Hebrew alphabet, all the characters, the first to the last character. Now, you may be saying, why is that there? Well, it's telling us that Elohim used the Hebrew alphabet as a tool to create the heavens, the waters. Now, why does it say the waters? Well, because the first of their kind. It didn't exist previously. Therefore, it's the beginning of it. It's the waters. Then it says the again, But like I said, Aleph Tav is the Aleph Bet, the entire 20 composition of 22 characters being represented. And the earth, like I said, land. So again, the tool for creating earth, creating the heavens, was the Hebrew Aleph Bet. Now, why is this important? Because it's telling us that we are capable of understanding what the heavens and the earth are. We're not necessarily able to understand what Elohim is or the design, create, or the thought of six, create six. So let's move on here. Now, what I've done here is I associated 5 attributes to this verse. These 5 attributes represents the creator's involvement within creation. Now, I'm going to start with the very first word, keter, which means crown, and that is associated with bara. Now, what is bara? Well, it's a beit ration aleph. What it basically means is that something contains intelligent strength, intelligent energy. So in the very beginning of creation, the creator created intelligent energy. Not just energy, not just intelligence, but an intelligent energy that's going to propel creation into existence. And that's known as Keter, crown. One day in another episode, I will associate some of God's names to each one of these. So when you read your Bible and you hear a specific name being mentioned, you'll know which one of these are speaking. And it's quite fascinating when you read your scripture that way, that you start understanding the creator in a much more real, intimate, connected way. The second one is, Beri and Sheet are under Keter. So there's this thought of 6. Then Hakma comes in. Hakma is the second bara, another intelligence, energy intelligence was created. Now, this is at a spiritual level. Remember this. And this word means wisdom. And wisdom is what you need in order to design something. Then we have Elohim. What is Elohim? Known as Binah. It means understanding. In other words, being able to take the thought, the design, and create something, make something of it, create an action that will fabricate, birth creation into existence. Now we're going to skip the et for the moment, the Aleph Tav, and go straight to Hashmayim. This is known as Zer Anpin. Now, I'm not going to go into any depth on this because that's future video, but Zer Anpin is what we are fashioned after, and we'll see that very shortly. Then there's something, again, we're skipping the Aleph Tav again and going straight to Haaretz, which is a code word for Malchut, kingdom. So it's not necessarily talking about a place per se, but rather it's speaking of a result of creation, the result of actions that took place before. So we have a total of 5 here. And these are known as Sephirot. Sephirot simply means counting or countings, but they represent attributes of the creator. And they do, like I said, have names associated with each one. What I did here is create a visual. You can see it's like a string of pearls. I decided to put them in a vertical alignment from top to bottom, from eternity down to finality. Again, this is still physical. This is still not physicality, but rather it is spirituality in verse 1. So we had the crown, which is the will, the creator. We have the wisdom, the designer of creation. We have binah, the understanding, the birther, the fabricator of creation. We have Zer Anpin, which is who we are going to be created like. And we have Malkut, which is a result of all these coming together as a result of action. So pay attention to this. Zer Anpin is separated during the 6 days. So when we follow day 1, day 2, day 3, day 8, and all the way to day 6, this is what's happening. Zer Anpin is being split into these 6 parts. And from right to left, from top to bottom, we have Chesed, Gevarah, Tiferet, or Tiferet, Nitzach, Hud, and Yesud. I'm not going to go into detail what these actually represent. That's a future video. But you can see how this 1 becomes 5. I'm sorry, 6 becomes 6. So the thought of 6, the designer of 6, the fabricator of 6, took the heavens, the waters, which is a plural word of a singular item, and split it into 6 pieces called days. So we have the 1 becoming 6. Now watch what happens here, and you'll understand more about the image of what we're created in. On the left, you see Keter, Chakma, Binah, that visual vertical line. Zer Anpin, Malkut, and we see Zer Anpin being split into the 6 pieces. And then you take the other 4 sephirots, you take the 6 new sephirots, you put them together, and you get this, what's called the tree of life. Let me move over my picture here. And there you go. Now you should see Malkut is at the bottom. At the very top, you see Keter. To the right, you see Chakma. To the left, you say Binah on the first 3. And then you pop down, and all of a sudden you see Chesed, Gevarah, Tiferet, Nitzach, Hud, Yesud, and then Malkut at the bottom. This is the image we are created in. We are created an image of Zer Anpin. And I'll explain more what Zer Anpin actually represents in the future. So we were created in this image. We were created to take these attributes that Zer Anpin was split into, they were put into our existence as part of us. And these are the 6 attributes within us that we are to work on throughout the week, so that eventually we will have a true Sabbath in Malkut, the 7th day. Stay tuned. I will be doing more videos on this, and I'll explain this in further detail. But for now, contemplate what you see here. There is a real design in Genesis being revealed to us so that we can become like God. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Shalom.